Hey guys, thanks for joining me. In today's video, we're going to take a look at a new power station from a company called Inverter. And this is the Alpha2000. It's the main unit. And then they also sell expansion batteries for this. Now I use the plural batteries because you can add up to 15 of these expansion batteries. So this is a 2000 watt inverter. We're not going to get into all the specs just yet because I haven't had a chance to really do anything more than unbox these and just a quick glance at the manual. But 2000 watt pure sine AC inverter with a 2048 watt hour rated battery capacity. All of the expansion units also have a 2048 watt hour rated battery capacity. So if you were to max this out by adding 15 of these to that, you would get somewhere north of 3,200 or 32 kilowatt hours of battery capacity, which is pretty substantial. So what do you get in the box? Well, with the expansion battery, you just get this giant parallel cable here. That's all you get. And you get a manual. That's this guy here. Now with the main unit, the Alpha2000, you get a XT60 to MC4 cable. Seems pretty decent quality and also reasonably long. I haven't had a chance to unwind it yet, but a nice heavy gauge computer style AC cable, so no charge brick for this. And you get a car charger, so 12 volt standard cigarette lighter adapter to XT60. Now, a couple things before we kind of jump forward in time. I noticed that each of these expansion batteries just has a couple of parallel ports on them so that you can kind of daisy chain these to the main module. But there do not appear to be any other inputs on this battery. So it does not appear that you can charge this via AC on its own or via DC on its own, other than connecting it to the main unit. So that is going to be something that you want to be aware of. And then I also don't see any outputs on this, and I'll amend that later on if I'm wrong. But I don't think there are any output ports on this. So this is really just an expansion battery that has to be controlled with the main unit, and you can't use it really independently, even though it does have its own LCD display. All right, so that's about all I can get into right now. So let me jump forward in time a few weeks after I've had a chance to run this thing through the paces, and we'll find out how it stacks up and if it's something you might want to think about. Okay, we are back. It's been about 6 weeks that I've had the use and testing of the Alpha2000 and the expansion battery. Let's quickly go over the key specs that I didn't mention before in the opening statement, and then we'll see how it holds up against those specs during functional testing, and then we'll wrap up with some pros and cons of this power station, including pricing, which I think is probably going to be a key consideration in the plus column for this product. Now, I already did mention that the AC inverter on the Alpha2000 is rated for 2000 watts continuous, but it does have a peak surge capacity of a whopping 4,800 watts. And that, of course, is only for just a split second to accommodate large startup power spikes from things like, compressors on an air conditioner. Now, both the main Alpha2000 and all of the battery expansions do utilize lithium iron phosphate batteries, and Inverter rates those to maintain at least 80% of the original capacity after 3,000 full charge and discharge cycles. And that should equate to at least 10 years of daily use while still maintaining 80% of that original capacity. Now, the main unit does have 6 3-prong 110 volt AC outlets in the back, and they're covered by this hinged plastic panel. And interestingly, all of the specs for the unit are actually printed right there on that back panel cover, which is kind of convenient if you happen to want to quickly locate a particular spec. Personally, though, I'm not a huge fan of these plastic panel covers. I think, a lot of power stations actually use them. And I think that especially for these larger units that aren't going to be likely to be moved in and out a whole lot, especially outside, they seem to be kind of an unnecessary nuisance maybe. And honestly, I'd probably just remove it and move on with my life. And by the way, regarding that 110 volts, I've seen a variety of comments in other videos that I posted that it should be 120 volts or go home. And I really think that concern is just way overblown. Virtually all residential AC appliances in the US are designed to operate on pretty much anything from a little over 100 volts to upwards of 130 volts. So getting all worked up over 110 volts, I think, is just a waste of energy in my opinion. Aww. So there are a total of 4 USB-A ports, and 2 of those are kind of the run-of-the-mill 12 watts, and 2 of them are quick charge 3.0 18 watt ports. Now there are also 2 USB-C ports, and both of those are 100 watt power delivery ports, which is really excellent if you need to charge a couple of high-end laptops or tablets. And for all of these USB ports, it does appear that they support their full rated power on all of the ports simultaneously, and not just a combined power limit for all of the ports that they have to share. So that's pretty nice. To wrap up on the outputs, it's also got your standard 12 volt 10 amp car socket. Now on the input side, it has a mobile app configurable AC charging capability, and we'll look more at that in a minute, but it allows you to fully charge the main unit in just over an hour at max charging speed. I think about an hour and a half actually. And if you have the expansion battery connected as well, you simply multiply that by the number of expansion batteries that you have connected. Now you can actually car charge this thing from a standard 12 volt car socket using the included car charger cable. But keep in mind that with such a large battery capacity and the inherent limitations on the power output of your 12 volt car socket, that's going to take a very, very long time to charge. And then finally, you can obviously charge the thing via solar through that XT60 connector on the back. And the charge controller on this unit can handle an input of as low as 10 volts, which is kind of nice to be able to go that low if you need to, and up to 100 volts with a max power input of 800 watts. Now, a couple of other notable features. As I alluded to earlier, the Alpha2000 does have mobile app support, and we'll take a quick look at that during testing. It's got 2 wireless phone charging zones on top, and it does support UPS functionality with a switchover of about 30 milliseconds, which should be suitable for most residential purposes. And finally, the weight on this Alpha2000 is, I think, about 56 pounds, and the expansion batteries kind of weigh in at, I think, just over 42 pounds. The warranty on these is 2 years, but do be aware that you do have to register the purchase on VitaRun.com to get the full 2 years. Otherwise, the manual says it'll be a year warranty by default. So I think that's particularly important if you happen to be buying these on Amazon instead of direct from their website. You'll want to remember to go register them on the website. Okay, let's jump into the performance testing and see how these things do. All right, let's find out the combined usable capacity of the Alpha2000 with its expansion battery through the AC inverter. So I've got the AC inverter on. We're currently recording 0 kilowatt hours or 0 watt hours because I haven't turned the heater on. So let me give it a load, and we should start seeing somewhere around 600 plus watts. If we just take a quick look here to see what's going on. On the top unit, we've got 558 watts going out, and on the bottom unit, it says 276 watts. Now, this says 557 watts, which basically jives with this number up here. So this is the total number of watts on the main unit, and then this is how many watts are being pulled out of this particular battery expansion. And you can see we have an estimated time to empty on both units. So 7.3 hours, 7.7 hours. And we are going to let this thing log watt hours until we are completely empty. And we'll find out what that usable capacity is out of both units. So we'll check back when it's done. All right, looks like our AC discharge test is complete. Let me connect the watt meter to power so I can see how we did. We got 4,053 watt hours, which is really good. All right, let's do a DC discharge capacity test on the Alpha2000 with the battery expansion. You can see we are full. We're at 100% on both units. Let me go ahead and enable the DC ports. And we're pulling just over 10 amps. Actually, I exceeded the cigarette lighter discharge capability. So this has a 10 amp cap that appears to be very hard. So 10 amps absolutely cannot exceed. So I back that down a little bit. Let's try 9.8 amps. Pulling 12.3 volts under load. And we'll check back at some point, make sure that it's a regulated port or not. And we'll find out how much capacity we get out of the DC ports. All right, looks like our DC discharge capacity test is done. Let's zoom in and see how we did. So, looks like we got 3,427.35 watt hours. That's quite a bit of difference from the number we got on the AC side. I might want to rerun that AC test. But this number is just about 84% of rated capacity, which is actually a pretty decent number. It's on the, I would say it's pretty middle upper average number of capacity tests versus rated. So I'm pretty happy with this number, and I feel like I need to rerun that AC discharge test. So let me do that. All right, while this thing is charging, I've currently got it charging at about 1200 watts. It'll charge up to 1800 watts total. And so to get both units fully charged You can do that in just about 3 hours at 1800 watts, which is pretty good for 4 kilowatts of battery capacity. But just listen to the volume. It's really not bad. The fans on this thing are not bad at all. I'll stop talking and we'll just kind of watch my decibel meter. All right, so just a little over 50 decibels, so 51.6 was pretty average. And my ambient sound down here when the furnace isn't running is probably something like 38 decibels or 40 decibels. So this really is nice and quiet white noise. It's not loud at all. I don't know if it's going to get louder than this when we put this thing under load, but we'll find out. All right, because we got such a crazy good number through the AC inverter last time in terms of usable capacity, I'm going to rerun that test and let it run continuously. We're going to see what kind of number we get this second time on the AC inverter output test. All right, looks like our second AC usable capacity discharge test has completed. And wow, that is almost as ridiculously good as the first time. So 3,985 watt hours. So that is really the highest AC usable capacity number or in terms of a percent of the rated output that I have seen on a portable power station. So very good numbers. All right, so it's about 11:30 at night, pitch dark outside, not getting any solar obviously at this time of day. And I have connected my 800 watt solar array. And 800 watts, by the way, is the maximum solar input on this Alpha2000. And I'm using the MC4 cable to XT60 that the unit came with. And that adapter cable is a good maybe 3 meters, so it's about 8 or 9 feet long. So it's a nice long XT60 to MC4 cable. All right, so we're just going to leave the solar panel connection on, and we're going to see if it wakes up successfully in the morning as the sun starts to come up and begin charging without any other interaction on our part. So we'll check back in the morning and see what it's doing. All right, it is 9 a.m. this next morning, and as you can see, the Alpha2000 and the expansion are both taking a charge from the solar array. I didn't have to do anything, so it woke itself up and began charging. So these things can be relied upon to begin charging on their own without any user interaction. Once the sun comes up in the morning, they automatically begin charging. And that's exactly what you want. All right, we're going to do a test on the UPS mode of this unit. Now I imagine the input charge is going to continue to trickle down since we're right at 99%. And we're only pulling about 40 watts. That's a combination. A little bit of that is the AC inverter. Most of that is the laptop. Now this is my sacrificial laptop. Got the battery removed, so if it has any interruption in power at all, it'll immediately shut down. So I'm going to try to simulate a power outage by pulling the grid power from the unit here, and you'll see the input go to 0, and hopefully the laptop will remain running. So let's go ahead and do that. Yep, so this definitely shut down, but it left the AC inverter going, and the laptop is still running. So it claims that this UPS switches over in approximately 30 milliseconds or less. So it is not like a 0 millisecond switchover, but it is passing through grid power when the unit is plugged in to grid power and you are pulling a load off the AC inverter. So it is moving that power directly from the grid. It is not coming from the battery. So that is what you want. You want that pass-through battery capability or pass-through power capability from the grid. So UPS mode definitely works. All right, let's do some load testing on this AC inverter. This is a 2,000 watt continuous pure sine wave AC inverter. And I do have the expansion battery connected, although it's not strictly necessary for this test. But we're also going to take a look at the app for this power station. And because the expansion battery is also shown in the app, I thought it might be interesting to take a look at that. So let's go ahead and turn this on. We do a long press. It automatically turns on the expansion, and then it boots the main unit just from the one button. And shutdown works the same way. So let me go ahead and turn on the AC inverter. And we're just going to let that run. I don't think I have a load applied yet. Oh, actually, yes I do. I have one of my oil heaters already on. So we're going to just leave that running because that's fine. Let's go ahead and pull up the app. So you can see here on the top, the app is called Cozy Life. Now this is not an app that VitaRun actually made, as far as I can tell. This appears to be an automation app, and VitaRun actually has a device profile that runs inside. So the profile gives us more specific functionality related to a power station than you would for other types of home automation. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and click on the tile for my Alpha2000 since I've already added it. And you can see I've got the temperature on the left, and I have got the state of charge of the main unit on the top right. And I've got input and output selections here in the middle. And then you can also see the input state of multiple expansion batteries if I happen to be using them. So we're just going to have the one. All right, and I'm not going to be using inputs now anyway. So let's just go ahead and go to outputs. And here we have an E-turbo mode, you can see there. And I have that disabled right now. And E-turbo mode, if you've seen some of my other videos, it basically throttles the voltage if you exceed 2,000 watts to keep that power output at 2,000 watts or very close to it. And that is not good for complex electronics, but it's perfectly fine for lights, fans, heaters, simple resistive loads. Don't run this, don't use E-turbo mode with computers, refrigerators, televisions, that kind of thing. It's not really good for that. I'm going to go ahead and leave that turned off, but E-turbo mode will handle up to 2,500 watts of input and correctly or successfully bring that down to around 2,000 watts if you have it enabled. Now, let's take a quick look in the settings of the app here in the lower right hand little gear. So you can see at the top I actually have the ability to set the priority charging method. So I currently have it set to simultaneous, which means it's going to charge both equally, the expansion batteries and the main unit, or you can prioritize the main unit by pressing generator first, or you can have it prioritize the expansion batteries first. I think it personally makes most sense to go ahead and have it prioritize the generator first and then go ahead and top off the expansion batteries. You can also turn off the key sounds. There's the key sound. I usually leave that off because the default key sound, honestly, it's a little bit annoying when you press the keys and get that little beep all the time. I don't really need it, so I usually turn that off, and I'm glad that the app gives me that option. I'm going to have the screen set that to maybe a 30-minute screen timeout, just because I like to be able to see what's going on. And then AC fast charging. You can see you can throttle this from 1,800 watts all the way down to 800 watts, right? And the reason you might want to do that is you don't really need to fast charge full bore all the time. Doing so puts more stress on the cells than you would if you charged it at a lower rate. So you could actually control that here. Now I'm going to actually leave it at 1,800 watts, and I'll explain why. Because you also have the option to set an AC slow charging power, and that can be set by up to 600 watts all the way down to 100 watts. So with a flip or press of a little button in the back of the main unit, you enable slow charging at whatever you set here. So I think that's very cool. I don't have to get the app out. I can configure it in the app, and then if I want to slow charge, I'll just enable slow charging. If I want to fast charge, I'll just enable fast charging with a press of a button. So I really like that implementation. And then you've got standby time for the unit overall. I've got it set to 6 hours. And that would also cover, by the way, the DC outputs. And by the way, you notice there's a refrigerator mode that you could set so it doesn't automatically shut down on very low power, highly intermittent loads. Now I did run my DC 12 volt fridge test on this for 24 hours. And I had the shutdown set to 2 hours, and it still didn't shut down, which tells me this thing is fairly sensitive to even very low, very intermittent power draws. I still didn't trip the auto shutdown. So that's very cool, and I think generally you're not going to have an issue. And if you did, you can just set it to never shut down by choosing refrigerator mode. Then you just got a separate shutdown configuration option for the AC. That's just for the AC inverter. So that's about all there is in the app. Let me go ahead and get this load test going. So we've been drawing a little over 1,216 watts. Let me go ahead and enable the DC port. I've actually got my tablet plugged in over here so that it doesn't shut the screen down. And that way that'll stay visible when I'm running my tests. All right, let's see what happens when we significantly exceed the 2,000 watts continuous with the E-turbo option turned off. All right, let me set the timer. We'll see how long it's going to let us run at just about 2,350 watts. That's 350 watts over the continuous rated of 2,000. I'm already impressed because it hasn't shut us down yet. That's pretty good overhead, by the way. All right, yeah, just shut us down. So looks like right at 1 minute, since I was a few seconds late starting the timer. So it does show that we have an AC overload now. To reset this, I'm not sure if I need to power it down. I think I probably actually have to power it down. Oh, the error went away. So maybe I don't have to power it down. Okay, cool. So I didn't actually have to power cycle it. I was not aware of that. All right, now I want to see if we can exceed it just by a little amount. So I'm going to turn on a little space heater in addition to my oil heaters. That should kick us up over 2,000 watts here in a second. And there we are. So I'm going to start a timer, and we're going to see if we can run in this state for 15 minutes. All right, we hit our, let me dismiss this. We hit our 15 minutes, no problem. Let me go ahead and turn the loads off here. Yeah, so the fans pretty much ran the entire time. I did put the decibel meter up there, as you saw, and the loudest they got was right at about 70 decibels, maybe 71 decibels, and that is right in front of the unit, at kind of where it's going to get the maximum number. So I don't think this is unreasonable volume for a 2,000 watt load. I've got a couple of 2,000 watt inverters hanging on the wall in my other test corner over there, and they are much louder than this. So this isn't bad at all, really. So definitely passes the load test on the AC inverter. All right, as you saw, the Alpha2000 managed to live up to its specs just fine, even letting us significantly exceed that 2,000 watt continuous rating by a little over 10% from the AC inverter for a full minute. But let's talk about some things that are potential compromises that I think you'll want to take into consideration when you're deciding if this unit is a good fit for you or not. The expansion batteries have no ability to be charged or discharged independently from the main unit. Now, of course, that's a non-issue if you don't really anticipate needing or wanting to use them separately. And the 800 watt solar input max on the main unit is certainly sufficient to enable you to fully charge either just the main unit or the main unit and one battery expansion module in a single good day of full sun conditions. But if you think you're going to need more than just 4 kilowatt hours of battery capacity, which would certainly require more than just one expansion battery, and you need to rely on solar charging exclusively, well, that 800 watt solar limit is not going to be sufficient to fully recharge via solar in a single day of full sun in that particular circumstance. And even with just one expansion battery, if you have partly or mostly cloudy skies, it'll likely take you a couple of days to fully top it off under those conditions. So while you can add up to 15 of these battery expansions, adding more than just 1 or 2 at most is probably only going to be practical if you don't plan to rely on solar as your primary source of charging power, and instead maybe plan to use it more as a home backup power system for short-term power disruptions. In that case, it might be just fine. Those considerations aside, I do think that this is a solid option for people who want between 2,000 and 4,000 watt hours of capacity, and they don't want to pay a premium for it. And that brings me to what just might be the most compelling detail about the Alpha2000, and that is the price. The list price on this main unit is $14.99, and that's already a pretty solid deal for a 2,000 watt hour power station that has expansion, UPS capability, and mobile app control, just to name some of those things. But right now, and I'm not sure how long this introductory pricing is going to last, you can actually get this thing for $9.99. So that's basically 50 cents per watt hour. And I'm fairly certain that makes this the least expensive full-featured power station that I've actually ever reviewed. And the expansion battery can be had right now for only $6.99, which again, easily the best price I've seen on a 2,000 watt hour expansion battery. So if you happen to be buying the combo of one main unit and one expansion, you're basically getting a system with over 4 kilowatt hours of battery capacity for only about 42 cents per watt hour, which is crazy low. Now you can buy either of these directly from VitaRun.com or from Amazon. And I think you can get that same pricing in both places, but you do have to use the code RWOutdoor at checkout. And of course, I'll put direct links for you in the description below per usual. You might want to check both sites to see which one nets you the best kind of out the door deal, because on Amazon, I do know you're probably going to get sales tax, and I don't think you'll have that direct from VitaRun.com. So just something to check into. And again, I'm not sure how long this crazy pricing is going to last. Pricing can and does change over time, so if you happen to be watching this video several weeks or more after it was posted, you might see different pricing if you go look at that time. All right, I think I've run a little bit long on this video, so I'm sorry about that. I do hope you found at least something helpful in the video. If you did, please consider clicking that like button for me. I'd very much appreciate that. And if you're not already a subscriber, well, by now you probably know the drill. I've got a bunch of interesting projects and cool products in the video queue coming down the pike, and maybe you'll find some of those or other videos that I have on my channel helpful in some way. I do sincerely thank you for hanging with me on this video, being especially that it was extra long, and I do hope you'll consider joining me for the next one, which hopefully will be, less long. Until then, have fun out there.